Good afternoon. I'm going to give you a presentation today on guidelines for scientific writing. In this presentation, we're going to go over three general areas: how to write a good scientific paper, talk to you about mixed methods research papers, how to prepare those, and taking an example from my own research about converting a poster to a manuscript. In this one slide, it conveys the 7 principles of scientific writing. And this is a nice example to go through. So in the first place, you place the new information you want the reader to emphasize in the stress position at the end of the sentence. You save the best for last. Then you place the person or thing whose story a sentence is telling at the beginning of the sentence in the topic position. 3, place old information, like material you already started, in the top position to link reader backwards. 4, follow a subject as soon as possible with a verb. 5, provide context for your reader before asking that reader to consider anything new. And 6, articulate the action of every clause or sentence in its verb. And in 7, in general, ensure that the emphasis of the substance coincides with expectations for emphasis raised by the structure. So this is a very nice slide to review on your own time. Getting started, plan to write a scientific paper. First of all, you plan for a paper and choose an appropriate journal to publish it in. Then decide upon the proper format to write the paper, and also to make decisions regarding authorship, contributors, as well as who should be acknowledged. Then you need to set the framework for the document. Consult the instructions to authors of the selected journal to submit the paper for its specific requests. Based on that requirement, the paper has to be written to meet the journal standards, and it's important to review these. When we organize a paper, these are the way in which things flow in the paper: an abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusions, acknowledgments, and references. Most scientific journals follow the format of a structured abstract, and I'll show you that towards the end when we show my manuscript. Occasionally, results and discussion are combined when the data needs extensive discussion to allow the reader to follow the train of logic of the research. So the following slides on how to write a good scientific paper are adapted from this publication, which you can find the whole publication as you do a Google search. In the paper, you need to construct an introduction that puts the work in context for the readers to tell them why it's important and relevant. Materials and methods should leave readers in no doubt about the way the work was done, and they can reproduce the same if they want. Present the results in easily understood graphs and figures, which tell most of the results, and discussions of the findings enable readers to appreciate the significance and implications of the work. On the title page, you put the title of the paper, the name of the authors with their respective institutions, and name and address of the corresponding author who's responsible for future correspondence related to the paper. The abstract is very important. It's a summary of the whole research paper. It should be written in a very interesting way so that it will attract the readers to read the rest of the paper. The universally used sections in abstract are background, methods, results, and conclusions. And again, I'll show you an example of that as we get later in the talk. In the introduction to the manuscript, which is usually 1 page, we first of all have an introduction that describes the works done so far in the intended field. It explains the scientist's reasons and motives for doing the research work, the research design and objective, and the methodology in general, and the overall summary of the obtained results. The introduction should explain the unsolved aspect of the subject, which needs investigation, and clearly point out the purpose of the study and the manuscript. The methods section is usually 2 to 3 pages. It should describe how the study was designed and carried out, and how the data was analyzed. It has to have a sufficient description, must be provided regarding the modus operandi of the research, protocol, any deviations or amendments to the protocol, and other essential procedures so that others may replicate the investigation. This is very important in scientific reporting so that other researchers can verify your data. A diagram or flow chart explaining the steps of the study will also help the reader. So again, to summarize, all the methods performed in the study must be described in such words so that the readers are in no doubt about the research process. The results section is usually 2 to 4 pages and 3 to 6 tables or figures. This provides the final findings of the entire research work. Results of the experiments should be presented in such a way that it's easily understood by the readers, giving in figures, tables, graphs, etc., to make the results more succinct and clear. Use the appropriate headings and title above each table, figure, and footnote if required to highlight the main issues. The text should highlight the results. The tables should present the actual numerical information, and graphs should be used to demonstrate relationships, which cannot readily be seen from an inspection of the tables. Simple tables are actually one of the ready references of the results for the readers. If applicable, compare your recent findings with the reference data from a previous study that you have published. In the discussion, which is usually 2 to 3 pages, overall, you interpret the findings in context of other standard references and the ultimate impact of the research work. This is where you can get your significance of your work discussed. It's obviously the data interpretation. Any decision about a hypothesis must be discussed with confidence and proven based on all the supportive evidence. Make sure to discuss and reference the most pertinent previously published work by yourself and other research groups. The discussion should be balanced, logical, and unbiased, focusing on all the observations in the paper and how your results support or conflict with published literature. In the conclusions, which are usually an ending paragraph of the manuscript, you want to conclude the whole paper on the basis of the data in a non-flowery, correct, straightforward, and interesting way with proper reason and explanation. You should highlight the most significant results, which emphasizes why the research is relevant in its aspect. Why the research is relevant in its aspect. In your literature cited or references, you should use 20 to 40 references. Use the most relevant and recent literature, which helps get an idea of the study plan. You can cite historical early references where it's appropriate. References should cover all the relevant and recent literature, web addresses of published papers, and other documents which support important points of the manuscript. In the acknowledgments, you have to acknowledge who is directly or indirectly participated or inspired to complete the study. This can be someone who aided in the study but did not make it to the author list. It can also be someone who provided editorial assistance or supplies valuable reagents that were not publicly available. Be sure to acknowledge any funding sources for the project. How long does it take to write a paper and get it published? Well, it takes a lot longer than you think. So some words of advice are carve out a solid 2 to 3 hours period to write uninterrupted. This is not easy to do with all the demands on our academic schedules, but it has to be, you have to schedule time to be writing your paper, and this has to be respected by others. You have to set your relative time frame, i.e. expect to get first draft finished in a month. Do an outline of your paper. That is very, very important. Start small and build on what you have. Having a pre-prepared basis like a poster or a lecture will really help you. Try to get a writing partner, someone who can help you get references or write up materials and methods. Take some of the burden from you. Promise yourself and your mentor you will stay on course and get your paper submitted. Shown here is a relative timeline for getting published. The usual time from submission to publication can be anywhere from 3 to 12 months. You submit your manuscript. Hopefully it has been reviewed by all the authors. And then when it is submitted, it's assigned to an editor who will either give you rapid rejection or send it out for peer review. Peer review can take a number of months, and the reviewers will evaluate whether to accept, reject, or revise. In many cases, manuscripts have to be revised for the journal. And so you'll go back through this cycle of revising and having reviewers evaluate again before you publish. So what are the barriers to success? First of all, there is no allotted time and too many interruptions. You have to make this a priority to get your manuscript out and published. So you have to set time in your schedule to be able to do this. No clear plan to follow. You did not make an outline. Make sure you know the current literature in the field. Maybe do lit review before you start writing your paper. You need to get a writing partner or a mentor. If you don't have these, it will be very hard to finish your paper. And also look at how many secondary authors that you have. Think carefully about the author list. All authors have to comment and approve the manuscript before it is submitted. Now that we have gone over the basics of writing a good scientific paper, we'll talk about mixed methods research papers, which are different than a straight scientific research paper. The slides that I'm using here are taken from a presentation that's shown here, and I've also given you the website where you can go ahead and look at the entire presentation yourself. So mixed methods research is an approach to inquiry and research that combines quantitative and qualitative methods into one study in order to provide a broader perspective. Instead of focusing on one type of methodology, mixed methods researchers emphasize the research problem and use all approaches available in order to come to a better understanding. Mixed methods research involves collecting and analyzing both quantitative and qualitative data. The quantitative data includes closed-end information that undergoes statistical analysis and results in numerical representation, while qualitative data is more subjective and open-ended. It allows for the voice of the participants to be heard and interpretation of observations. The next few slides will highlight tables of qualitative versus quantitative research, and I'll comment on some of these. So first of all, in the purpose, in qualitative research is to understand and interpret social interactions. Quantitative research is to test hypothesis, look at cause and effect, and make predictions. So the purposes are very different. The group studied in qualitative research is usually smaller and not randomly selected, where in quantitative research is larger and randomly selected. The type of data collected in qualitative research is words, images, or objects, versus quantitative research is numbers and statistics. And the form of data collected can be such as qualitative data, such as open-ended responses, interviews, participant observations, and field notes, whereas quantitative data is based on precise measurements using structured and validated data collection instruments. So you can clearly see that there are big differences in these two types of research. To continue, in qualitative research, we identify patterns, features, and themes, whereas in quantitative research, we identify statistical relationships. Under objectivity, subjectivity is expected in qualitative research, but in quantitative research, objectivity is critical. The role of the researcher is also different. In qualitative research, researcher and their biases may be known to participants in the study, and participant characteristics may be known to the researcher. However, in quantitative research, the researcher and their biases are not known to participants, and participant characteristics are deliberately hidden from the researcher, especially in things like double-blind studies. The scientific methods are also different. In qualitative research, it can be exploratory or bottom-up. The researcher generates a new hypothesis and theory from the data collected. In quantitative research, it is confirmatory or top-down. The researcher tests the hypothesis and theory with the data. Lastly, there are some more characteristics to consider. And when we look at human behavior in qualitative research is dynamic, situational, social, and personal, Very often it is about individuals and populations. In quantitative research, it's regular and predictable. The focus is different. In qualitative research, it's a wide-angle lens and examines the breadth and depth of phenomena. In quantitative research, its opposite is narrow-angle lens to test a specific hypothesis. And in the final report will be a narrative report with contextual description and direct quotations from research participants. In quantitative research, statistical report with correlations, comparisons of means, and statistical significance of findings. So the outcomes are very different. What would be the reasons for doing mixed method research? Well, first of all, there is insufficient argument for what you're studying, either quantitative or qualitative. And it may even be insufficient by itself. So you have to collect data in both areas. You may need a multiple angles argument. Quantitative and qualitative approaches provide different pictures. There may be the more evidence, the better argument. Combined quantitative and qualitative provides more evidence. Community of practice argument. Mixed methods may be the preferred approach within a scholarly community. Eager to learn argument. It's the latest methodology. And its intuitive argument, it mirrors real life. The advantages of mixed method strategies are that both quantitative and qualitative research have weaknesses. Quantitative research is weak in understanding the context or setting in which data is collected, while qualitative research may include biases and does not lend itself to statistical analysis. Mixed method strategies can offset these weaknesses by allowing for both exploration and analysis in the same study. Researchers are able to use all the tools available to them and collect more comprehensive data. This provides results that have a broader perspective of the overall issue or research problem. The final results may include both observations and statistical analysis. Therefore, the results are validated within the study. Using both approaches in one study provides additional evidence and support for the findings. What are some of the challenges? It's more time-consuming to collect both quantitative and qualitative data. The study may require more resources to collect both types of data. The research procedures are more complicated and may be out of the comfort zone of the researcher. Investigators are often trained in quantitative or qualitative methods and may need assistance crossing over. Methodology requires clear presentation when published or presented so that the audience can accurately understand the procedures and the findings. So before you go into a mixed methods research paper, you should absolutely have a discussion with your mentor about what approaches need to be taken. In publishing mixed method research, there's just a few ways that methodologies may be combined in one study to create mixed method research. A researcher may collect data using quantitative data instrument. This is one example. Another example is a researcher may conduct interviews to explore how individuals describe or feel. A researcher may be planning to use quantitative methods to assess the impact of a particular treatment plan, and a researcher uses focus groups. Okay, we're going to move on to the third part of the presentation, which is converting a poster to a manuscript. In regards to the abstract, you already have some form of abstract in your poster, so that will start you off. Your materials and methods will be a longer version of what you presented in the poster, but you can build on what you have written. If you have an illustration that may be needed to illustrate a method, then that can be the first figure in your paper. Results. You should follow the order you have them in the poster. They have to be expanded from the content of your poster. In the conclusion discussion can also be derived from your poster, but written out more fully, point by point, as you had it in your poster. Acknowledgements. You need to acknowledge people who have helped in the various processes of the manuscript, who are not authors already, and all the funding sources. And remember also references, supplemental data, and figure captions. What's shown here is a recent poster from my group, and you will see that it is jam-packed with information, as many posters are. There is little, small introduction. We've listed the project aims, and the figures that are used in this poster are the basis for the figures of the corresponding manuscript. This is an awful lot for a reader to take in one setting. That's why it is turned into a manuscript to fully explain the study and the study results. So this paper, Functional Characterization of Rare UBA1 Variants in X-linked Spinal Muscular Atrophy, is posted with this slide deck so that you're able to compare the poster to the actual manuscript. This is the abstract taken from the manuscript, and you will see that it's in fact in much more detail than on the poster. We have several sentences about background to the study, an overview of the methods of the study, an overview of results, and then our conclusions. And this is generally the format that an abstract will take. So this is one of our figures from the manuscript, and we were lucky enough to be able to take it directly from the poster. It's shown here as figure 1 in the poster. And again, as I said, many times you can use your poster as a basis for your scientific paper. In the material and methods from the papers, we go into much more detail about things like reagents that are used and other paragraphs that spelt out. In this case, it was a molecular study where we were making plasmids. We had assays to describe and a number of other methods. And this took 1.5 pages in the manuscript as compared to the very short materials and methods that was on the poster. In the results, please compare and contrast the published paper posted with this presentation the poster was derived from. Look at the poster figure 2 as an example. In the manuscript, we had 5 figures, 2 tables, and 4 dataset boxes that were required by the journal, which explain the primary dataset of each figure from the paper. After this presentation, please sit and compare the poster and the manuscript. I hope that this presentation has helped you. Good luck writing your paper.